Hello, and welcome. I am Light, and this is my channel. Today I'm going to tell you about a murder that was solved by the victim's own ghost. Before we get started, if you would please give this video a thumbs up, I would greatly appreciate it. If you are not already and you would like to be subscribed, please do so. It really helps my channel, you guys. And let's talk about this murder mystery. What do you think? The Greenbrier ghost is the name popularly given to the ghost of Elva Zona Heaster Shue. She was a young woman who lived in Greenbrier County, West Virginia. She was murdered in 1897. Initially, her murder was judged as death by natural causes, but the court later declared that the woman had been murdered by her husband after the victim's mother, Mary Jane Heaster, testified that her daughter's spirit had come to her and revealed the true cause of her death. In October of 1896, Elva Zona Heaster, who went by her middle name, Zona, met a charming blacksmith whom she fell in love with, and his name was Erasmus Stribling Trout Shue. And they married soon after they met. She took his last name. On January 23rd, 1897, Zona was found dead in her home. The cause of her death was listed as childbirth, and she was buried on January 24th in 1897 at the local cemetery, which is now known as the Soul Chapel Methodist Cemetery. But her mother, Mary Jane Heaster, later claimed to have seen Zona's ghost at her bedside. According to Mary Jane's story, Zona insisted that Erasmus had murdered her. And armed with a story allegedly told to her by the ghost, Mary Jane Heaster visited the local prosecutor, John Alfred Preston, and spent several hours in his office convincing him to reopen the matter of her daughter's death. Whether or not he actually believed her story of the ghost is unknown, but he did have enough doubt to dispatch deputies to re-interview several people of interest in that case, including Dr. Knapp. He was probably responding to public sentiment, as numerous locals had begun suggesting that Zona had been murdered. Preston himself went to go speak with Dr. Knapp, who stated that he had actually not made a complete examination of the body, and this was viewed as sufficient justification for an autopsy, and an exhumation was ordered and an inquest jury formed. Zona's body was examined on February 22nd in 1897 in the local one-room schoolhouse. The autopsy lasted for 3 hours and found that Zona's neck had been broken, which, in case you don't know, doesn't usually happen during childbirth. Facts. According to the report published on March 9th, 1897, the discovery was made that the neck was broken and the windpipe had been smashed. On the throat were marks of fingers indicating that she had been choked. The neck was dislocated between the first and second vertebrae. The ligaments were torn and ruptured. The windpipe had been crushed at a point in front of the neck. Shue was then arrested and charged with the murder of his wife. Erasmus Shue was held in jail in Lewisburg while he awaited for the trial to begin. During this time, more information about his past was coming to light. He had been married twice before. His first marriage had ended in divorce, with his wife accusing him of great cruelty. His second wife had died under mysterious circumstances less than a year after they were married. As it turned out, Zona was his third wife, and Shue began to talk of wishing to wed 7 women. He freely spoke of this ambition while he was in jail, and he told reporters that he was sure he would be let free because there was little evidence against him, with the exception of twisting her neck so hard that her ligaments tore. Other than that. The trial began on June 22nd, 1897, and Mary Jane Heaster was Preston's star witness. He confined his questioning to the known facts of the case. He tried to stay away from the issue of her ghostly sightings, obviously. Perhaps saying a different tactic needed to be used, Shu's lawyers questioned Mrs. Heaster extensively about her daughter's visits on cross-examination. And that tactic backfired when Mrs. Heaster would not waver in her account despite intense badgering. As the defense had introduced the issue, the judge found it difficult to instruct the jury to disregard the story of the ghost, and many people in the community actually seemed to believe it. Consequently, Shu was found guilty of murder on July 11th and sentenced to life in prison. However, the Greenbrier ghost was never mentioned by the prosecution and played no part in the case against Shu. And then a lynch mob was formed to take him from the jail and hang him, but the mob was disbanded by the deputy sheriff before any damage was done. 4 of the mob's organizers later faced charges for these actions. So what happened to Erasmus Shu? Did he go on to marry 4 more wives? Well, no. He died on March 13th, 1900 in West Virginia State Penitentiary in Moundsville, the victim of an unknown epidemic. He was buried in an unmarked grave in the local cemetery. But here's something interesting. The state of Virginia has erected a state historical marker near the cemetery in which Zona is buried, and it reads, "Interred in nearby cemetery is Zona Heaster Shu. Her death in 1897 was presumed natural until her spirit appeared to her mother to describe how she was killed by her husband, Edward. Autopsy on the exhumed body verified the apparition's account, and Edward, or Erasmus, was found guilty of murder, was sentenced to the state prison. Only known case in which testimony from a ghost helped to convict a murderer." Thank you for coming to my channel. I hope you found that interesting. Good night.